So let's talk about what happens in Crossing. So there's basically three different plots that happen. There's Bjorn and his company in Spain. There's Egbert and company in England, and then there's Lagertha and Ivar and company in Kattegat. And a lot of different things transpire. In Spain, Bjorn finally raids his first city of the Mediterranean. There's this huge culture clash, and I love how they represented it in this episode. And really, that all culminates with Floki and Helga's plot, and especially Floki's. Whenever he walks into the mosque and he sees all these people worshiping, but there's no idol and nothing, Floki's amazed by it, and actually um, Hafton cuts off the head of one of them because he doesn't like the sound of his tone. So you see this brutal scene interjected with all these religious goers, and sort of humanizes Floki in a way we haven't seen before. I think Floki's changing as a character. He's not as brutal as he used to be, and he's not as, evil. And I honestly think that Floki will sort of um, be a focal point of the show now that Ragnar's gone, and I'm glad he is. And it was interesting to see him save that whole entire mosque. I guess it shows how much he's grown as a character. But of course, we saw the Halfton and Harold basically tearing up the city this episode, and we saw them being more brutal than anybody else. And we actually hear them talk about the plot to overthrow the Lothbrooks at one point, and so that'll come into play later. But that was interesting to see. The whole harem raid was pretty well done. It was pretty funny seeing them all open the doors to find all those women in there. And the standout plot is actually not involving violence at all. It was Floki and Helga's subplot. Helga had wanted a child, but Floki had never wanted one. And so Helga's basically goes through the city while this carnage is going on to find this girl, and she basically takes her with him. And Floki's like, "What are you doing, Helga?" But Helga was determined to take her. So it'll be interesting to see how that whole family dynamic works out with Floki, Helga, and now this person who has no idea how to speak their language or anything else. But it's kind of nice to see that because, through the carnage, through all the heads being cut off, people being stabbed, it was nice to see sort of a human plot involved. And I know this is Vikings, so we love seeing the violence, but also it is cool to see that. And sort of what was really good about Crossings is it reminded us that this show is brutal, it is violent, that's what it is. And the Vikings really weren't that good of people, and that's what it represents, the show. So it was really well done, everything in Spain. In England, we got to see Egbert portrayed as this guy who's destroyed now that his friends died, that Ragnar's dead, and actually he was portrayed wonderfully by Linus Roach, and really want to give him credit for his role. He just kills this King Egbert, and his dynamic with Ragnar last week, and then his whole, or the last few weeks rather, and his whole entire scene this week where he's distraught and doesn't really care was amazing. It's like a completely different version of Egbert we hadn't seen before, a very distant version. We see that Aethelwulf takes over the invasion defense plans, and so we'll see that happen. And honestly, Aethelwulf, people complain that, oh, as a character he's one-dimensional, but you really can't do that because this guy's been through a lot. I mean, his wife left him for his father. I mean, that's got to make you pretty messed up and angry. So I understand why Aethelwulf's so mad. Um, and then, really, the standout scenes of the episode were in Kattegat because of Ivar. I mean, I loved everything in Spain, but it's kind of amazing how the show was able to make Ivar's storyline more compelling and interesting than the Spanish raids. But it opens up, and Sigurd and Ube are talking about Ivar and how are we going to control Ivar, and really they came to the conclusion you could not control Ivar. And then you have this wonderful scene where Ivar comes crawling into the throne room and basically challenges Lagertha to a duel, and she says, "Do you know what you're doing?" And he's like, "My brothers don't have any." He basically said, "My brothers don't have any balls," and challenged her to a duel to the death, and she turned him down. Well, after that terrifying scene with Ivar, we get to see Lagertha wake up in the middle of the night in a later scene, and she's crying out to Ragnar, wishing he was there. And it was a very powerful scene. I really want to give credit to Catherine Winterick for doing that scene extremely well. And that was the first example of a character feeling Ragnar's loss. At the end of the episode, basically all the brothers are visited by this Odin-like figure. He tells all the sons that their father's dead, and there's this very emotional scene. Bjorn's even crying, so it was insane to see, and very sad to see. And this terrible storm goes over Kattegat, and basically the whole world now knows that Ragnar Lothbrok's dead. And it's this very powerful end of the episode, which really cemented Crossings as a really good episode of Vikings. And other notes to note, they are building a wall around Kattegat. But it's kind of interesting that they're doing that, because I think it stems from the idea that Lagertha's feeling like she needs to cement her power because she's not quite in. And that's ultimately expressed through her asking to see her if a son of Ragnar would kill her, and he said yes. So I'm guessing it's going to be Ivar. I'm hoping it's going to be Ivar, but I hope they hold it out for a while, because I really don't want to see Lagertha get off the show right away. Um, this episode was fantastic. Crossings was a wonderful episode. I know I gave a longer review, but I'd have to give Crossings a 8.7 out of 10. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Remember to like and subscribe for more. Also, check out my other Vikings reviews.